And now we're going to talk about why Korean adoptees get put up for adoption in the first place. Um, I thought the first portion was exciting and interesting, but this is really where it's at, I think. I think this is really, really important, and I think a lot more people should know because some adoptees actually don't know why they were put up for adoption. I mean, generally, I don't know everyone's specific stories, but these are the general trends. Um, and then if adoptees don't know, hell, a lot of other people don't know. So I can't tell you how many conversations I've had with adoptees, with non-adoptees who are Asian, like Korean Americans, Chinese Americans, Korean Koreans even, and non-Asians about this. So hey, let's put on this wider platform. So basically, what we're going to talk about for this portion is a brief history of Korean, international, transnational, excuse me, adoption. Then we're going to talk about what I think are three primary reasons why adoptees have been put up for adoption since the 90s till now, which are financial, social stigma, and the couple slash the parent slash parents being too young. So, brief history. So, after the Korean War, after any war, especially Civil War, there's a lot of orphans. And Korean society, Korean economy was destroyed. It just wasn't capable of caring for the many, many, many orphans throughout Korea. South Korea specifically. North Korea had their own. But understand that Korea is divided. So we're only going to talk about South Korea. And so Harry Holt, who was in Korea at the time, thought it was a good idea because he saw these orphans to place these orphans in America, adopted by American, typically white, Christian couples that were looking for children who couldn't have children. Or they decided they want to do it for the goodness of heart, charity, etc., etc. So, that's where the first wave of adoptees come from. Were Korean War orphans. Now, you say, well, the Korean War ended. You sent a lot of orphans over. So why did Korean adoption persist till today? Well, as you might know, United States stationed American GIs in Korea. And when soldiers there, they want to have sex. And what ended up happening is a lot of near military bases, they would have these Korean shanty towns pop up, which serve as like the recreational areas for these American soldiers. And included there is prostitution. And these Korean women, some of them, some was for love, some was just because they not on birth control. They would get pregnant and have these half Korean, half other children, known as happas. Happas just means like half. Now, here's the thing you know is about Korean society. If we talk about Confucianism, Confucian society, yeah, it doesn't. Okay, it's not really Confucianism. It's like a weird form of Confucianism plus this idea of specific type of Korean nationalism that started to emerge at the late 1800s, then solidified by Japanese colonization, and was basically planted in stone by the Korean War. And basically, it meant you need to have pure Korean blood. You need to be Korean. You need to have Korean blood. If you don't have Korean blood, you're not Korean, and you're not welcome. So what do you imagine these half Korean babies with the white fathers, black fathers look like? They don't look Korean or fully Korean. You can tell they're different. Koreans won't accept them. Society does not accept them. So they become the next wave of Koreans adoptees. These half Korean children, these happas. So you're like, okay. But then Americans, they still have bases, but like it's more controlled. There's not as many numbers of that. You don't really have these shanty towns anymore. So why is Korean adoption still persists today? Well, there ends up being another group of people who are stigmatized by Korean society, and those are single parents. By single parents, I really mean single mothers, because Korea still has very strong Confucian ties to it. It's very patriarchal. So they have, and with their form of Korean nationalism, which is all about you need Korean blood, Korean parents. Yes, exactly. Single mothers. Is that it's all about the family registry, or invincible in Korea. They are, but it's also about the registry. So why Gene Halley's not in jail? Yep, yep, very true. But in Korea, it's all about the family registry. If you're a child from a single mother, you can't get on the registry. That registry is crucial for legal reasons and societal reasons. They're fucked up, man. Yeah, I don't disagree. Korean society needs a lot of work, a lot of reform. Anyway, so I'm not going to get into it, but basically, more recently, single mothers also stigmatized have had to give up their babies for adoption. We'll talk more about that when we talk about that point specifically. Um, First point is financial. Um, some families just don't have the financial capability or capacity to raise another child. Instead of making them live in poverty, they decide adoption's a better route. Because, especially international adoption, it's be a family, theoretically, they'll have more money, they'll have a better financial future, and they hope that they will love their children and they won't be abused. Now, that doesn't always happen, but that's the reason why some people who have financial troubles give up their children for adoption. They think they'll have a better life, especially economically, that they can't provide. I do have some personal stories, not mine specifically, but I know some adoptees, this is why they were adopted. For one, adopted his parents. He had two older siblings, but their family was poor, and those siblings had some mental deficiencies. I'm not sure how to go, like learning disabilities. Basically, their family was very strained economically, financially, and so they decided to give up the third child, so the third child could have a better life economically somewhere else. Um, Actually, let's go too young because I'll talk about social stigma for a long time. Another reason is that the couples are too young. The mothers and the couple just don't. They're too young. They're not mature enough. They realize that they don't have their life together, that sort of thing. Instead of making the child suffer through that, they get put them for adoption so their child can have a better, more stable life. That's what they perceive. This is also coupled with being a single mother. Maybe if a single mother is like older, has money, stronger willed, some of them decide to keep their children and not put them up for adoption. But if you're like young, single mother, thinking about your future, child's future society, you're more likely to give up your child. So now let's talk about social stigma. Woo, this one is a doozy. So we're gonna talk about like reasons why, and then I might talk about look in comparison, like the children who are in orphanages, as a case study, case example, why you people do. That's a high number. 90% of adoptees being given up these days are from unwed single mothers. Not surprising. Korea is now a more advanced society. You would say they're we would call like developed country now. In political terms, social economical terms. So, but because Korean society is so backwards, people who are going to give up are the ones who cannot enter society, cannot be given a rightful chance in society, and that would be children of single mothers. So yeah, so unwed mothers are still ostracized by family, their own family, and they face abuse and discrimination outside the home. Some of that could be sexual abuse or discrimination, exploitation, physical, verbal. They're locked. It's harder for them to get a job. They're like, where's your husband? Where's your family registry? And, and then you find out you have a kid, and then you're a slut. You're a whore. That's what they think. You're a slut or a whore at that point. So there's immense pressure, both from their personal relationships with their parents and their family, as well as societal pressure for you not to be a single mother. And then their children don't get it any easier. So, for instance, there's some legal things. I think they're trying to get away from it, but like if you're not family registry, you can't get certain legal benefits. Like you can't when you go to school, and then you go to school. It's obvious you can't do certain things. People find out you're constantly harassed. You don't get a fair shot at going to college. You don't get a fair shot at the standardized testing or being prepared for it. You're not able to go to certain colleges without the family registry. Um, you're not don't have the resources for it. Not many people are going to lend money to a single mother, unwed mother, that sort of thing. And it affects the children. And it said they don't have as many opportunities, and it's because the patriarchal influence is still on this, and Confucian society values that are still in South Korea. Um, excuse me. It makes it very hard for you to graduate high school if you're a child single mother. You're constantly abused, bullied by everyone, basically. It's like a shame for the society and for your neighbors and anyone associated with you. Then you can't get in good colleges. Even if you do well, you can't get in good colleges because it's shameful that you're the child of single unwed mother, aka the son or daughter, a child of a whore. Even if she's not a whore, they're gonna call her a whore and a slut, that sort of thing. And so you can see that sort of orphanages. I think some orphanages are getting better at this, but I remember when I went to Korea, and then we had a Korean adoptee pastor, and he told us about the statistics. I forget exact number, but basically, these orphanages with no support, like the have no support. But 18, the guys all end up like in crime, or doing like menial labor, physically intensive jobs with crap pay, and a lot of the females end up becoming prostitutes. Now I don't know how that's changed since I was told that statistic by him. That was back in like 2013, so that was like 6 years ago. But if you read some studies, like those who are forced into prostitution in Korea, they're runaways, and the vulnerable and stigmatized. So, yeah, not that surprising. Now, think about it. A lot of Koreans know this. So, if you're a single mother, do you want that life for your child? Probably not. You're more likely, unless you get great family support, who are powerful enough and have enough, money, then you're probably going to give your child up to have a better life. Especially they still prefer like international adoption because they think the children get a better life in like America or a Western country. It's more socially fair, and they'll be in a more social, economical, better background. I don't know, background's the right term for it, but better situation. Be interesting to see how those measures compare to America. It would. It really would. But here's the thing, no one really does these numbers. No one's doing many case studies or reports on this. Where some people choose to be single mothers intentionally. Yeah, it would be. You'll find it very difficult to find that in Korea. You might be able to find it more in America. But yeah. I had like one other point about this, but I don't remember it at the moment. I lost it. But basically, there are reasons why your birth mother gave you up, and they're legitimate, real reasons. Mostly, it is you weren't gonna have a great life in Korea, in your situation due to society and other factors. So they gave you up. Your birth mother gave you up so you could have a chance at a better life. That's what it comes down to. Okay? Not because they hate you. Because society basically tells them, fuck you. We're not going to let you society says, fuck you, this is not going to happen. It's just not. If you try to make it happen, I'm going to destroy you. I'm going to crush you. I'm going to make your existence terrible, and I'm going to make your child's existence terrible. And under that pressure, that's the main reason why. What's up, the only Garby? You would love to be adopted by the Koreans. I mean, I'm not. I mean, that's your opinion. I guess I get it, but at the same time, I don't know. Well, the Korean society sucks in a lot of ways. Also, interesting enough about domestic adoption. So I don't know how prevalent it is now, but a couple of years ago, they were talking about like people, experts were saying, well, even in domestic adoption, which is where, yeah, it's like we can put humor in it, but yeah, we are doing a little more serious topic at the moment. It's all good, but speaking of like domestic adoption, it's a couple years ago. So when someone they were trying to shift adoption from international to domestic, is that the people who are adopting domestically in Korea, the mother will pretend to be pregnant, um, and then pretend to have the baby, and then they'll never tell the child that he or she was adopted. Now there is exceptions to that. There's literally an adoptee choir, Korean adoptee choir in Korea, made up of Korean, clearly adoptees, domestic Korean adoptees, and they all know, and that is very interesting for Korea, and it's very cool, because you have these Korean parents in Korea being like, "Yeah, we adopted. This is my adopted child," and for Korea, that's like, so. But like talking, especially with I'm talking about adoptees. Some of them don't realize what their birth mothers go through, and they think they either birth mothers forget, or they think their birth mothers don't care and hate them, etc., etc. But actually, birth mothers really don't forget, and it's not just not me just pulling stuff out of my butt. There's media, there's books, there are videos. I have personal examples. I have friends' examples that correlate this. Birth mothers don't forget. They love you, even if they have to give you up. And I think that's one thing a lot of people forget, especially certain adoptees who are very jaded. They forget that. And I'll give you 3 examples. One is a book called I Wish for You a Beautiful Life. You can get it on Amazon. I have a copy somewhere in my room. And it's stories by birth mothers. And they're like writing in their stories like letters to their child. It doesn't get sent them, just put in this book. But it's a collection of their thoughts about like what they think and how much they love their child, etc., etc. We'll actually watch a video if it still exists when I made this originally of adoptee with her daughter, her birth daughter. Like she had is adoptee who then had a child, and she's just reading one of the stories. There's Iran one when it's a house for unwed mothers. You end up in Korea. There's a number of them. You can usually, they usually be adoption related tours, but you can talk to birth mothers and hear their stories and have real conversations with them. And I've been on a number of them. I think I've heard like 2 or 3 these houses getting a group of birth mothers, and they're once they're pregnant or they just had their child, so young mothers, and they talk about their stories. They talk about why they chose to adopt, the pain, because they love the child, what they hope for the future. They hope the child will contact them. They'll be able to communicate again in the future, that sort of thing. What the cool thing is like 20 years ago, that was not the case. Birth mothers gave up their child and that was it. It's interesting to see birth mothers now wanting to be able to communicate with their birth children in the future. Some birth mothers actually are in contact with the adopted family almost from the get-go, so they're almost in constant communication even when their children are adopted, which is very interesting. So I think it's changing some. And then my personal example, I got in my reunion with my birth mother, and she kept bringing up how she's sorry, gave me up, how much she loves me, that sort of thing. So she literally said, like for your friends, like tell them like we don't forget, we're always thinking of you. So it's like 3 different examples: a book, I hear from birth mothers that I have no connection to, these houses, and then from my own birth mother. So right now we're going to actually, uh, hopefully this video is still up, and she reads a specific story from "I Wish You a Beautiful Life" with her.
Hi
So,
guys.
as you
So
see,
this
it's a
is a
little emotional.
very edited and quite a spontaneous video. I'm upset and I'm crying because I've just read this amazing book, which I think all adopted children, no matter what country you are from, should read. Yes, she's very happy. She is 4 months on the 8th of April, and it's I Wish for You a Beautiful Life. Letters from the Korean birth mothers of Aran one to their children. In my letter, I got from the, I guess, Eastern Welfare Agency. I got my birth mom's name, age, and the situation. She was 29 and my father was 32. And reading these letters from these birth mothers has just brought so many emotions.
By the way, she's added that information she got from her agency. Considering her age, most likely large amounts of that file is bullshit. Um, so back then they fabricated a whole ton of stuff on those records, like when they're being processed for adoption. Technically, they had to meet the birth mother, and she had to say her reasons, and they like filled a form. But there was a lot of stuff fabricated. I know personally, my file was greatly fabricated. So just keep that in mind. That a lot of her story, she thinks when she was talking about her file, like her parents' age situation, there's a high chance high chance most of that is fabricated at some level. Like her name, the name, her birth parents' names were probably fabricated. Ages might have been fabricated, and depending on the story, there's a decent chance the story that they gave her, why she was given up, was also fabricated. The background.
I'll read you one, and I think everyone should read this book. Watch with it. Okay. Okay. I wish for you a beautiful life. My darling and lovely baby, I met your daddy in the cool of winter when there were no stars shining through the bare branches of the trees and a chill wind was blowing. We sat in a cafe drinking hot coffee and making sweet talk. I felt like the whole world was mine. He was handsome and 183 centimeters tall, so he was popular among women. But he loved only me, and our beautiful and precious love became deeper and deeper. One hot muggy summer day, because I could not take a summer vacation, I was lying in my room in front of a fan. An old lady came to visit me. She was your daddy's mother. She strongly disagreed with our relationship because there was too much of a gap between our social and economic classes.
Mm-hmm.
Also,
See?
your daddy had continued his studies. I couldn't meet your dad again after that, and I couldn't reach him when I tried to inform him that I was 3 months pregnant. My sweet and pretty baby, I needed money to have an abortion, so I worked in the kitchen of someone's house. Once I had earned some money, I went to the hospital and saw you through an ultrasound. After hearing the beating of your heart, seeing your features through the screen, and feeling your movement in my body, I just couldn't have an abortion. I realized that you were alive in my body and I could not commit such an unpardonable sin, so I came back from the hospital. As time grew by, my stomach became large with you. I was so afraid and didn't know what to do. It was a desperate time in my life. Then I was led to ARAN 1, and I delivered the most adorable and pretty baby at 2 a.m. on a Monday morning. My daughter, I bore you in suffering and pain, so I couldn't stop crying whenever I looked down at you lying next to me. I felt like the world was upside down. My sweetheart, you looked a lot like me. You had a cough when I sent you away, and my heart was full thinking about you. I couldn't bear the pain. Bless you. I wailed for you in the corner of a dark room. Mother's love, that's what it is. As the days pass, I yearn for these things. To hold you one more time, to feed you one more time, to meet you one more time. My darling, you may never be able to forgive me. I won't ask you to forgive me because mine is the sin of giving up my own child. For what I did, I'm ready to accept any punishment until the end of my life or forever. I hope that you have met good parents and that you will have a good life. I wish for you a beautiful life, with a beautiful face and a beautiful heart. Think of your life as precious because you're a beautiful child born out of pain. I cannot give you any help, but I will always pray for you. I chose your name by myself. You will remain in my heart forever with this name. How much you must have grown. I wish you a life with God always. Loving mother. I just think these are beautiful. These pictures. And I'll just read the blurb. An excerpt from letter 13. I hope that you have met good parents and that you'll have a good life. Oh. That was just the one I read. I'll read what ARAN 1 is.
ARAN 1 is the one I talked about, where you can meet birth mothers. It's one of the homes that they let birth mothers in.
Financial and spiritual needs of the young women who live there. Most of the birth mothers of ARAN 1 choose adoption for their babies, and each is asked to write a letter to her child. I wish for you a beautiful life offers a glimpse at some of these letters, and is an invaluable gift from the birth mothers of ARAN 1 to Korean adoptive families everywhere. These are voices not often heard, sometimes thick with guilt and loss, but ultimately filled with a powerful message of hope and love. ARAN 1 is a non-profit organisation, depending on private donations for much of its support. All proceeds from this book will go to ARAN 1. So I just wanted to share that with you all. I think that's the first time I read it, and just having my own baby at 19 and knowing how much she's relied on me in these few months, it just breaks my heart.
Yeah, so that's called Being a Korean Adoptee, Reading Letters from Korean Birth Mothers. People want to watch the last minute and a half. The only garbage is so sad. Yeah. It is. It is. It's emotional. I don't know if it's all sad. It's emotional. It is sad. It's very emotional. But you've noticed in that story she read from earlier things we talked about, social stigma. Beautiful but sad. I would agree, yes. If you thought that was sad, can't wait for the next video. It's a YouTube video showing a reunion between a birth mother and an adoptee, her child. But yeah, so that story I just want to touch on. We talked about some points earlier. Korean mothers don't forget. They don't forget. Basically say showing their love, but they know that they have to give them up, their child up. And she mentioned that story specifically about the social economic difference, and that plays a role, aka social stigma. So, just want to bring up my points from before are shown in this example. So now we're going to watch a birth meeting and some thoughts by a birth mother, just sort of bring it home about what birth mothers feel and what they think. And I think that's something that's very underrepresented when we talk about adoption and why adoptees are put up for adoption, is we forget the mother side. We focus so much on the adoptee side that we forget about the other half. And I think that's a shame, because there's a story behind that too. And I think for some adoptees, after adoption, some of them have bad experiences. They are have hate in their heart regarding their situation, regarding their birth mothers, not understanding how difficult the choice was. First of all, with society, but also deciding some cases not to abort you, and then deciding to give you up. It's very hard to give up your child that you decide to bring into the world. And I don't think some people remember that. Anyway, let's watch this now. I think this video is still up. Yep. And it's a 6.5 minute video. G Moderman.
Really hard time with
I know
being
G.
different. And, definitely got the being made fun of at school and being picked on. And So I pretty much grew up always feeling different, always feeling, always wishing that I didn't look the way that I looked. Well, my name is Melissa Ann Canomas, formerly Melissa Chatham, and I am 34
Oh, G.
years
Moderman
old,
made the
and
film.
among other things,
Ah.
I am a Korean adoptee, I guess on my way to reunite with my birth parents.
I don't know this adoptee. I know the adoptee who created this film.
I'm hoping that going will help me heal and will help me to feel better about coming from Korea and better about the culture and just in general. But I have to be honest that a lot of times I feel like I don't really have a home, like I don't really totally fit in or identify with Americans. And I have felt so rejected all my life by Koreans that, either place it's kind of a bittersweet.
I think that's a common
bittersweet
theme for many adoptees. The idea of identity. Just a side note.
So I think I'm afraid I'm going to get off that plane and, see all these Korean people and be in this country. And even though I'll look a lot like everyone there, I'm going to feel like a foreigner.
Maybe we're wrong, but it really feels like she went on a birthday tour, included meeting her birth mother.
It really doesn't feel real. And, until I think I actually see her and touch her and, hear her voice, you know what I mean? Then I think it'll really start to set in.
만나고 싶었는데 그래서 만났을 때 이렇게 어머니도 만져보고 싶고 막 그러고 싶었는데 그런 날에 오늘 이렇게 찾아왔다고 그러네요.
Sometimes while I was searching, I would pray to be able to see you in my dreams.
그래서 그동안 6년 동안 찾으면서 기도할 때 어머니 꿈속에서라도 이렇게 어머니를 만질 수 있는 그런 일이 일어났으면 좋겠다고.
Those are obviously not the right translation for the Korean.
2001년부터 찾기 시작했어요.
Being shown in subtitles.
She never ever forget you the day from the day she let you go.
She never forgot you from the day she let you go. In case you couldn't hear it.
Well, thank you for not forgetting about me. I was afraid that you would.
It seems to be a great fear for
It's
adoptees
gonna
being
be really
forgotten
difficult and
by their birth
trying to
parents.
maintain and develop a relationship when you're both on the other side. You're on two different sides of the world. You don't speak the same language. I'm not going to get to see them frequently, and so it's kind of like, how do you build a relationship with someone when you don't have the kind of most basic things necessary to build a relationship, such as language and proximity, But I'm gonna have to learn Korean in order to do that, and that's very overwhelming and it feels unfair. I searched for her because I wanted to know her and have a relationship with her.
그 저기 이렇게 친가족 찾는데 시간이 참 오래 걸리긴 했지만 이렇게 오래
I just didn't expect that would make me so emotional and that would make me so sad. Like, I just really, you have a translator and it works out great. But it doesn't work out great because there's so much that cannot be communicated. I myself have so many mixed and ambivalent feelings toward international adoption, because here I am dealing with all the loss and the grief of it. But at the same time, back then I wouldn't have wanted to grow up in Korean society because I would have been second class. You know,
Mm-hmm.
there's just still a lot of stigma and a lot of shame
Second class
attached
indeed,
to it.
because of how society is in Korea.
That's really cool that we both really like hydrangea. You know what I mean? That's really neat.
엄마도 이 수국 좋아하고 자기도 수국 좋아한다는 게 너무 참 좋대요. 둘이 똑같은 꽃을
It's
좋아하는.
really hard to describe how it went. I guess meeting her was super emotional. Really, what started to overtake me was just joy. I think it all still feels very surreal. Like, even in the 12 days that we've been here, it still feels very surreal. And even part of my motivation of wanting to search for her was to be able to tell her, you know, I'm okay, and I don't want you to beat yourself up. You know, I want you to be able to heal and to forgive yourself. And so I think in that sense too, I wanted her to feel that from me.
Yeah, so that's a very specific video. There are other reunion videos online. I have my own reunion video, but sadly, because of circumstances, I really cannot show that on stream. For instance, like on all my social media, I do not have a picture of my birth mother for societal reasons. So I literally have a video of our reunion like this one, not as edited, but I have a video. It's longer than this one actually, but I can't show you on stream, unfortunately, because of what was the privacy, because of privacy. But I can tell you, reunions, a lot of reunions are very similar to that. And she brings up some interesting points. I hope in a future Imperial discussion stream, which we'll be having every Thursdays or Fridays, where we talk about deep issues such as international affairs or history or societal issues like adoption, that we can delve more deeply into it then. I would love to have a stream where we talk about birth searches and reunions as one idea. But yeah, I would love to talk about more about my birth search and my reunion. Sadly, if I do that, I'll have to like blur out her face from the pictures and the video, etc. But that can be arranged if people decide they want to learn more about that topic of birth searches, reunions, etc. I can do the extra work to make that happen, so you can see my video. But that is an idea for the future. So I guess we'll go Q&A time for about adoption. Doesn't have to be specific about adoption, or it can be. It can be very specific questions about it. So I'll wait a couple minutes because it's a little deeper of a topic. People might have a little more time, need to think. So we'll play some K-pop while we wait, in case someone has any questions they want to bring up. Also, for those who are watching but don't have a Twitch account, to be able to talk and chat, you have to register for Twitch. It's free. It's very quick to do. If you have Amazon Prime, you can get a Twitch Prime. You automatically have a free Twitch Prime account. You just have to link it with your Amazon Prime. If you have questions but you don't feel like registering for Twitch and following, become our latest zoner, you can also contact me on Twitter at protector_6. Ask your question there. I'll wait a couple more minutes in case anyone that wants to ask questions. If you have questions but you don't want to ask them on stream, feel free to contact me on Twitter, or you can join our Discord and you can DM me directly through Discord, that sort of thing. So this was very structured this time. Some of these Imperial discussion streams won't be as structured. Some will be as structured, some will be semi-structured, some will be very open, not structured at all. It just depends on the topic and the flow of the stream, if that makes sense. Like, some topics will just be very free-flowing depending on the topic. I imagine, so for next Imperial discussion stream, which is always Thursday or Friday nights, Eastern time, between 9 p.m. and 10 p.m. That's when the start time is. Sometime between 9 and 10 p.m. Eastern time in US. Next week's. Can't think of a good question. If people don't have questions, like, you can always think of it later. Always hit me up on Discord. Can you hit me up on Twitch? You can hit me up on Twitter. I mean, sometimes good questions don't come at the moment. Like, it's all good. I can't tell you how many times I've talked to people about adoption stuff before. And I'm like one of those adoptees who will talk about it. When people want to know a question, I'm totally down to talk about it for a long time. I did like a podcast with my friend, and he ended up interviewing me for like an hour or two about it. But next week's Imperial discussion is going to be on North Korea. It basically is going to talk generally about why North Korea acts the way it does, and more specifically, so it's a little more specific, pointed questions, is why North Korea will never give up its nuclear weapons program. Are they adopted from American families or from a lot of different places? No, they're from throughout the Western world. So you have a lot of adoptees in Europe. But I would say Western world primarily. So mostly Europe and United States and Canada. Places off the bat I can think of. New York has a decent number of Korean adoptees. Out west is like LA has a decent number. DC, Maryland, Virginia area has a good amount. What you would be surprised is Minnesota, around Minneapolis and St. Paul area, lots of Korean adoptees, like an insane number. They have a lot. I'm not as familiar with Europe, but there's a lot of Europeans as well who are adoptees. England, some France, Norway, Sweden, etc., etc. So throughout the Western world, essentially. I bet there's some in Australia too. I'm just not connected as much. Yep, so they're throughout, but a lot in America, because literally adoption started in America. The primary amount with the Holt Agency by Harry Holt. But there's others in other countries as well. If we don't have any more questions right now, people can tweet me, DM me, and ask me on Discord, etc., etc. I think we'll definitely in the future delve more into adoption issues. I think it's a good topic. It's thought-provoking. I think we talk about, one could be birth searches and reunions. Another could be thoughts on adoption to begin with. Is it good? Is it bad? Should it be done? Should it not? Etc. etc. Oh, thank you for the only Garby. Welcome to Prozone Empire. It's their newest zoner. Much appreciated. I'll give you these two ending songs, and I find them very connected to adoption.